usually when we talk about a massively successful record going platinum, there's this expectation of total control.
Right, yeah.
Like, you picture these state-of-the-art studios, a team of producers meticulously tweaking every single knob, endless months of writing.
Oh, absolutely. The whole corporate machine.
Exactly. And a band that just has everything perfectly mapped out. But in 1987, Metallica completely shattered that illusion. They recorded a masterpiece that was born entirely out of chaos, a tragic death, and a skateboarding accident, of all things.
Yeah, it's wild.
So we are taking a deep dive today into a record that just bucked every industry rule. We're looking at Metallica's 1987 release, the $5.98 EP Garage Days Revisited.
It is such a compelling case study, honestly. We aren't just looking at, a simple collection of cover songs here.
No, not at all.
We're looking at a real-time snapshot of a band in absolute crisis. They're fighting against intense label pressure, they're battling the retail industry, and honestly just trying to figure out how to simply function as a band again.
Right. And to really understand this, we need to set the scene for you. If you were a fan following the band back then, what did 1987 actually look like for them? Because, they weren't just taking a casual break between albums.
Oh, no, not even close. It was incredibly heavy, both musically and emotionally. Let's just put ourselves in their shoes for a second.
Yeah.
They had just suffered a profound tragedy. Their bassist, Cliff Burton, died in a horrific tour bus accident in Sweden.
Which is just devastating.
Unimaginable. And that alone is enough to end most bands' race.
Sure.
But they made the really difficult decision to carry on, and they recruited his successor, Jason Newsted. So you have a band that is deeply grieving, trying to integrate a brand new member, and on top of that, the music industry machine, it just does not stop.
Right. The calendar doesn't care if you're grieving.
Exactly.
But I've got to ask, why was Burton's loss so specifically paralyzing to their creative process? Obviously, losing a friend is awful, but musically, couldn't the other members just, write the guitar and drum parts like they always did?
Well, that overlooks how crucial Cliff Burton was to their actual songwriting architecture.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he wasn't just standing in the back playing root notes on the bass. Burton was the member with the absolute deepest understanding of musical theory.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the guy introducing classical harmonies into thrash metal. He taught the other guys about counterpoint and melody. So when he died, they didn't just lose a bass player, they lost their musical compass.
Wow.
Trying to replace Cliff Burton, it wasn't just replacing an employee. It was literally like trying to replace the engine of a car while it's bombing down the highway at 90 miles an hour.
Okay, let's unpack this. They have lost their musical engine, they have a brand new bassist, and yet the calendar is just forcing them forward.
Relentlessly.
The source material notes they were facing mounting pressure to perform at the 1987 Monsters of Rock Festival at Castle Donington.
A huge deal.
Massive. And to make matters even more stressful, their UK label, Vertigo Records, was aggressively demanding new material to coincide with that festival appearance. Imagine starting a high-stakes new job, like Newsted did, right?
Oh, man.
And the boss just says, hey, we need a massive presentation immediately, while half the team is in mourning.
Yeah, the clock was aggressively ticking. And, they genuinely tried. They tried to write new original music with Jason Newsted to meet that demand.
Right.
But given the emotional toll and obviously the loss of Burton's compositional skills, it was just completely dry.
Just nothing there.
Yeah, all they managed to produce from those initial songwriting attempts was a single rough demo for a song called Blackened.
Which is a great song, but it's just one demo.
Exactly.
And just when you think they might be able to build some momentum off that one track, disaster strikes again. James Hetfield, the frontman and rhythm guitarist, he gets on a skateboard, falls, and literally breaks his arm.
Yeah, you can't make it up.
But wait, I have to ask, if he's the singer, couldn't he just, sing and let the lead guitarist, Kirk Hammett, handle all the guitar work in the studio while his arm healed?
What's fascinating here is that to assume that is to misunderstand how Metallica's specific sound is actually engineered.
Okay, how so?
Well, James Hetfield's right hand, his picking hand, is the literal driving force of the band. He uses this technique called rapid downpicking.
Right.
So instead of strumming up and down like a normal guitar player, he strikes the strings in a continuous, aggressive downward motion.
That sounds exhausting.
It is incredibly physically demanding, and it creates this highly percussive, machine gun-like rhythm that basically defines thrash metal.
Oh, I see.
So Hammett is a brilliant lead player, obviously, but he couldn't replicate Hetfield's specific rhythm attack. With a broken arm, Hetfield couldn't downpick. The band was physically paralyzed.
So they're completely boxed in at this point.
Intel.
They can't write because they're grieving and missing their primary arranger, and they can't even play the one new song they did write because the rhythm guitarist is in a cast. How on earth did this physical limitation force them to change their entire creative strategy?
Well, it shifted their strategy by forcing them to basically abandon the idea of a new album entirely.
They just scrapped it.
Yeah, they had to. But they still needed to gel as a unit with Newsted, and they still had the label breathing down their necks for a release. So instead of trying to force new material, they returned to their roots.
Makes sense.
They decided to record covers of some of their absolute favorite bands from the late 70s and early 80s, specifically punk rock and bands from the new wave of British heavy metal.
Wait, before we move on, for those of you who aren't deeply entrenched in metal history, what exactly is the new wave of British heavy metal?
Or NWOBHM as it's spelled out. Why did that specific subgenre matter so much to them?
Right, so the new wave of British heavy metal, it was this movement in the late 70s featuring bands like Iron Maiden, Diamond Head, and Def Leppard.
Okay, the legends. Exactly. They essentially took the dark, sludgy heaviness of early Black Sabbath, right? But they stripped away the blues influences.
Interesting.
And they injected it with the speed and the totally DIY energy of punk rock. For Metallica, these British bands were the absolute blueprint.
So they're going back to the source.
Yeah. Doing covers of these specific bands was a brilliant pressure release valve. You don't have to worry about composing the perfect riff or writing profound lyrics. The song already exists.
It already works.
Exactly.
Right.
Your only job is to play it and inject your own energy into it. It totally removes the stress of creation and just leaves the joy of playing together.
So they have the songs picked out. They're going to run backward to the stuff that made them love playing music in the first place. But there's a logistical problem. To rebuild their chemistry, they needed the right environment.
Right.
And they didn't go to some plush studio in the Hollywood Hills. They went to a literal garage.
A literal garage.
Specifically, drummer Lars Ulrich's garage in El Cerrito, California.
Yeah, but remember, this is a heavy metal band playing at absolute breakneck speeds.
Yeah.
You can't just plug in a double-kick drum kit and massive amplifiers in a quiet residential neighborhood without the police shutting you down in about 5 minutes.
Wait, clarify that for me. What exactly does a double-kick drum setup do to the sound? Why does that guarantee noise complaints?
So a standard drum kit has one bass drum operated by a single foot pedal, right?
Right.
A double kick setup uses either 2 bass drums or a double pedal on a single drum. It allows the drummer to play rapid-fire, machine gun 16th notes with both feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it literally shakes the foundations of a building. It produces this massive, booming, low-end frequency that just travels straight through standard residential walls.
Which brings us to the new guy, Jason Newsted, and how they solved this noise issue.
Yeah.
Because before joining the band, Newsted actually had experience working as a construction worker.
He did, yeah.
So the band hands the new guy some tools and tells him to hang drywall and soundproof the drummer's garage so they can rehearse.
Yeah.
Hold on, making the new guy hang drywall while the rest of the band watches. That sounds less like, grounding sweat equity and more like straight up toxic workplace hazing.
I mean, it absolutely looks like hazing on the surface, especially when you consider that on the liner notes of the actual EP, Newsted is officially credited as Master J. New Kid.
Oh man, Master J. New Kid.
Yeah, but you really have to view this through the psychological lens of 4 guys in their early 20s who just endured massive, massive trauma.
That's a good point.
They didn't have therapists, they had each other. Having Newsted physically build the room they were going to play in wasn't just about cheap labor. It was a profoundly grounding exercise. It creates literal and figurative sweat equity. He wasn't just stepping into a pre-existing machine. He was physically building the foundation of their new era with his own hands.
That actually makes a lot of sense when you frame it as trauma bonding. So once that room was built, they rehearsed the material there before taking it to Los Angeles. And they recorded and mixed the entire thing over just 6 days.
6 days.
6 days at A&M and Conway Studios. And they intentionally kept it raw. The liner notes proudly declared that the EP was not very produced by Metallica.
Yeah, doing all of this, the manual labor, the rapid-fire 6-day recording schedule, the totally raw self-production, it stripped away all the corporate polish that was starting to surround them at that point in their career.
It was a reset.
It was exactly the reset they needed.
And that raw DIY ethos didn't just stay in the garage. It completely dictated their track list.
Mm.
The way they selected the songs they were going to record is just a perfect reflection of that loose mentality.
Absolutely.
For example, the source material notes, they were in the middle of rehearsing a song called White Lightning by the British metal band Paralyzed. But while they are playing it, the lead guitarist, Kirk Hammett, just randomly starts playing a completely different riff.
Yeah, just out of nowhere.
He plays the riff for a song called The Wait by the post-punk group Killing Joke.
And instead of stopping him and demanding they stick to the schedule, the band just pivots. They decide right then and there, you know what, let's record The Wait instead.
That's incredible.
That kind of organic left turn is only possible when you've completely removed the pressure of making a perfect album.
Right.
If studio time is costing you thousands of dollars an hour, you don't casually abandon a song you've been rehearsing for weeks. But when you're self-producing in 6 days, you just follow the energy in the room.
Yeah. They also considered tracks like Signal Fire by the Japanese band Bow Wow and I'm No Fool by Gaskin, but ultimately dropped them. But the most chaotic creative decision has to be what they did with the Misfits covers.
Oh, yeah.
They took 2 completely separate Misfits songs, Last Caress and Green Hell, and just mashed them together into a single track. Musically, how do you even take 2 songs that were originally recorded 5 years apart, featuring entirely different vibes, and smash them into one cohesive track?
It requires finding the connective rhythmic tissue. Like Last Caress is almost a twisted pop song. It has this catchy, upbeat, almost 1950s style chord progression.
Yeah, it's weirdly catchy.
Exactly. And Green Hell, on the other hand, is a blistering, aggressive, hardcore punk track.
Total opposite.
So what Metallica did was match the tempo. They played Last Caress much heavier and way faster than the original. They ramped up the energy so that when they transitioned directly into the chaotic speed of Green Hell, it feels like a natural escalation.
Instead of train wreck.
Right, rather than a jarring car crash. It's an exercise in pure musical instinct.
And that instinct carried over to the business side, too. Here's where it gets really interesting. They didn't just take this punk rock, anti-establishment attitude into the recording booth, they took it directly into the retail stores.
They sure did.
This is where we have to talk about the pricing gimmick. They officially named the release the $5.98 EP, with the specific goal of stopping retailers from overcharging their fans. They even slapped a giant sticker right on the front of the original cassette release that read, "If they try to charge more, steal it."
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the 1980s music industry, you really have to appreciate the absolute logistical nightmare this caused.
I can't even imagine.
You have a major label, Elektra Records, distributing a release that explicitly encourages consumers to commit retail theft if the store manager decides to mark up the price.
But why did they feel the need to dictate the price in the actual title of the album? Couldn't they just ask the label to suggest a retail price?
Well, in the 80s, independent record stores and major chains had a lot of leeway to mark up highly anticipated releases.
Oh, okay.
Because this was a short EP, it was only about 25 minutes of music. Metallica felt it was fundamentally unfair for fans to pay the price of a full hour-long album. By embedding the price into the title, they literally weaponized their own album art against the retailers.
But that title created massive headaches across different formats, because physical media wasn't universally priced in 1987.
Precisely. Compact discs were still a relatively new technology back then.
Right.
The raw materials and the manufacturing plants required to press CDs were far more expensive than those used for, duplicating cheap plastic cassette tapes.
Sure.
The wholesale cost of a CD to the retailer was often higher than $5.98. So when the official American CD version was released, they literally had to amend the title of the EP. It legally became the $9.98 CD just to reflect the economic reality of that specific format.
Imagine having to legally change the name of your art just to match the physical plastic it's printed on.
Yeah, it's absurd.
And what happened when this hit the international market? The currency differences alone must have been a nightmare.
Oh, it got incredibly complicated. In Australia, the label decided to keep the original title, $5.98 EP. But obviously, Australian currency values were completely different.
Right.
So the label had to add a separate, highly contradictory sticker to the Australian release, clarifying that $5.98 was just the name of the record and not the actual price you're supposed to pay at the register.
Please pay 15 Australian dollars for the album titled $5.98.
Exactly.
That completely defeats the anti-establishment purpose of the title.
Totally.
But the UK pressings had an entirely different set of problems that actually altered the track list, right?
Yes, they did. To understand this, we have to look at the strict legal definitions of music releases in the UK at the time.
Wait, before we get into the UK dropping a track, what exactly defined an EP back then? Why did the length matter to the lawyers?
Right, so an EP stands for extended play. It's basically a middle ground between a standard two-song single and a full-length album, which is called an LP, or long play.
Got it.
In the UK, the official charts company had very mathematically rigid rules about runtimes. If a release went over a specific minute mark, it was legally classified as an album.
Oh, I see.
And that changed how it charted, how it was taxed, and how it was priced. The UK industry instituted these rules to prevent bands from packing singles with filler audio just to manipulate the album charts.
So because of the runtime of these 5 covers, what did they have to do?
They actually had to completely omit the track, The Wait, from the UK pressings.
Wow.
Yeah, they dropped an entire song just to ensure the total runtime squeezed in under the legal definition of an EP.
It is amazing how much chaos a handful of cover songs recorded in 6 days can cause in corporate boardrooms across the globe.
It really is.
But the band wasn't just trolling the retail industry with their pricing and their stickers. They were also trolling their musical rivals right on the record itself.
Oh, absolutely.
The deep dive source material points out this incredibly bizarre outro tacked onto the very end of the EP. It is a wildly off-key, intentionally awful, chaotic segment of Iron Maiden's massive hit, Run to the Hills. Why target Iron Maiden?
It really highlights a simmering feud and a major cultural shift that was happening in heavy metal in the mid-1980s.
Okay, tell me more.
Iron Maiden represented the established vanguard-like, the polished, highly theatrical old guard of British metal. They had massive stage setups, a giant zombie mascot, and these soaring operatic vocals.
Right, very grandiose.
Exactly. Metallica, on the other hand, represented the aggressive, rising American underground. They played much faster, way more abrasive thrash metal, and they performed in dainty jeans and t-shirts.
So by intentionally butchering one of Iron Maiden's most famous polished songs on tape, they were essentially planting a flag.
Yeah.
It was a very deliberate, petty jab at the old guard saying, we don't care about your rules or your polish.
Exactly. It's the ultimate garage band inside joke that they accidentally broadcast to the entire world.
So what does this all mean? Which brings us to the aftermath. We have a paralyzed songwriting process, a broken arm, a soundproof residential garage, an EP stitched together from spontaneous jams, international retail pricing chaos, and a petty jab at a rival band.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah. How did this project actually perform with the public?
Incredibly well, which is kind of the ultimate irony of this whole story. Despite the rough production, the fact that it was entirely covers and all those industry headaches, it actually peaked at number 28 on the Billboard 200 chart.
Number 28. For a raw, unpolished, 25-minute throwaway EP.
And we didn't stop there. The EP eventually achieved platinum certification in the United States from the RIAA, meaning it shipped over 1 million units.
Insane.
And it went gold in Canada. Over 1 million people bought a record that the band themselves admitted was just thrown together.
But then, after all that success, the EP basically vanished from the face of the earth. From 1989 all the way until 2018, the $5.98 EP went entirely out of print.
Entirely.
For nearly 30 years, you could not buy a new copy of it anywhere, which, in the pre-streaming music world, is the exact recipe for creating a holy grail.
Totally. Because it was physically unavailable for 3 decades, original cassettes and CDs became massive, highly coveted collector's items among fans. Now, the music itself didn't entirely disappear. In 1998, Metallica released a double album called Garage Inc., which compiled a bunch of different cover songs from throughout their career.
Right.
And they included all 5 tracks from the 1987 EP on it.
And in true Metallica fashion, they couldn't just cleanly re-release the songs. They had to mess with the artwork, too.
Yeah.
The source mentions that for the back cover of Garage Inc., they took the original 1987 Garage Days photo, and they literally just take pictures of their older 1998 faces over their younger 1987 faces.
Yeah, it maintains that exact same DIY cut-and-paste punk aesthetic that birthed the EP in the first place.
That's brilliant.
But fans wanting the original standalone EP format had to wait until 2018. That's when the band finally reissued the 598 EP Garage Days, revisited on their own Blackened Recordings label.
So they finally made it available again across all formats, including vinyl.
Right.
Taking control of their own catalog so they never have to fight a label over a price tag again.
Exactly. This raises an important question, though, when we look back at this entire sequence of events.
What's that?
Well, we look at this EP as a throwaway project, right?
Yeah.
A stopgap measure just to appease a label and kill time while a broken arm healed. Yet it became completely foundational to their legacy. It solidified their lineup and reminded them of who they were at their core.
From Cliff Burton's tragic passing, the intense pressure from Vertigo Records, James Hetfield shattering his arm, making Jason Newsted hang drywall, to legally fighting record stores over the price of a cassette tape. It's astonishing that this 25-minute release became a million-selling piece of history.
It really leaves you wondering about the modern music landscape, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Today, bands have access to infinite digital tracks. They have Pro Tools software that can automatically snap a drum beat perfectly to a grid, and Auto-Tune that can correct any flat vocal.
Everything's perfectly pristine.
Right, you can record an entire album in a digital vacuum without ever having to face a single limitation. But looking at the $5.98 EP, you have to ask yourself, by removing all the physical and logistical friction from the recording process, have we engineered the happy accident out of music completely?
That's a great point.
If a band today doesn't have a literal garage, a strict budget, and a broken arm to force them into a creative corner, can they ever truly capture that kind of raw lightning in a bottle?
That is a fascinating angle. We spend so much time building the perfect digital tools to remove every obstacle from our path, but maybe it's the obstacles themselves that actually shape the art. Thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive. We hope this look into the muddy, chaotic, unproduced waters of 1987 gave you something new to think about. Until next time, keep digging into the stories behind the noise.